ध्यायेत् शारदचन्द्रसुन्दरमुखम् ताम्रारविन्देक्षणम् भक्ताभीष्टवराभयप्रदकरम् कौपीनमात्रोज्ज्वलम् स्वात्मानन्दरसानुभूतिविवशम् सर्वानवद्याङ्गकम् श्रीमन्तं श्रीरमणीश्वरं गुरुवरम् योगासनाध्यासितम् ध्यायेत् श्रीरमणीश्वरम् ध्यायेत् श्रीरमणीश्वरम् ध्यायेत् श्रीरमणीश्वरम् हृदयकुहरमध्ये केवलं ब्रह्ममात्रम् यहमहमिति साक्षादात्मरूपेण भाति हृदि विषमनसा स्वं चिन्वतामज्जताव पवनचलनरोधा आत्मनिष्ठो भवत्वम्। Namo Ramana. We will commence to Friday's Atma Vichara session by listening to Bhagavan's Upadesham from the book Ramana Answers Self-Enquiry 1900 to 1950, a compilation of all the answers by Bhagavan on the subject matter of Atma Vichara, self-enquiry, by our founder president, Sri A.R. Natarajanji. Last week, we completed the first portion of the book, which is from 1900 to 1935. From today, we will be looking at all the answers given by Bhagavan from 1936 to 1950 on the same subject matter of Atma Vichara. After reading Bhagavan's Upadesham, by his grace, we will contemplate on his teachings there and then have a 20-minute Atma Vichara session, following which our President Sharda Akka would be talking about the same subject of Atma Vichara through Bhagavan's teaching in Ramana Gita, which is being compiled by Ganapati Muni. And then we will have the concluding prayers to Bhagavan. Self-Enquiry 1936 to 1950, Bhagavan Ramana Answers. First question, devotee. Was there any lapse in my tapas? Have I missed its very true nature? Devotee's question is, was there any lapse in my tapas? Have I missed its very true nature? Bhagavan answers, when the mind inquires from where the notion of I arises and dissolves right there at the origin of its birth, that is tapas. On the enquiry as to the exact origin from where the sound of mantra arises, the mind dissolves at the origin itself, and that is tapas. I repeat Bhagavan's answer. When the mind inquires from where the notion I arises and dissolves right there at the origin of its birth. That is tapas. On the enquiry as to the exact origin from where the sound of mantra arises, the mind dissolves at the origin itself, and that is tapas. Bhagavan here is clarifying the question as to any lapse in tapas. And often when we look at tapas, we look at mantra japa or something that we might have done as the sadhana. Our attention would be more on the doing part. The attention would be more on the knowing part, more on the doing part. But what enables within us to do it, we often don't inquire. We take it for granted. So Bhagavan is saying here, when the mind inquires where from the notion I arises, or where from the sound of the mantra arises, when we really inquire, what makes it possible for us to say I? What makes it possible for us to do this mantra, japa, or whatever sadhana that we are doing? What makes it possible? And know that source. And know, we have to get to know that there is something which is constantly there, which can know that there is a time where we are doing the sadhana and there is a time where we are not doing the sadhana. And there should be that one common entity which was there even when we were not doing the sadhana and even when we are doing the sadhana. Therefore, that source, that origin which is same when we are doing the sadhana or not doing the sadhana, but it was always present. That origin, Bhagavan says, we should first come to know. And then he gives the most important thing. Just knowing it doesn't make us get anywhere. He says, the mind which knows it should dissolve in that origin itself. And Bhagavan in Akshara Manamalai gives the example of this hailstone or the ice cube dissolving in the water. In that way, the ice is nothing but the water itself. This mind is nothing but the self itself. But because it is with the intelligence and with its imagination thinks that it is separate from it as an individual, as an I, and therefore thinks that I am the one who is doing a japa, I am the one who is doing the sadhana, and it is more and more strong about its knowing and its doing than being strong about that which enables it to know, that which enables it to do. It doesn't look into that. It takes the knowing and the doing as its own ability. And when it does that and doesn't really search for the truth which makes it possible, then it continues to maintain its intellectual and imagination strongly. It continues to believe that by its intellect, by doing this, by doing that, it will one day come to know. By its imagination, it will keep thinking of various paths through which it will come to know. Or it will think that whatever path I am following is not sufficient. Maybe I should find a new path. It will continue to trust in its own ability, in its own intellectual and imaginative ability, this very mind, and continues to do that sadhana, do that tapas. But it never turns and inquires what makes me possible to do this tapas. What makes it possible for me to know to do this. If it only asks that one simple query and gets to know the truth, then it is very clear that it is always that truth which enables not only in me, but in everything in this universe. In fact, everything is that. It is all water. This idea of I am an ice then dissolves. Dissolves means it is no more given reality. Because by giving reality to this form of ice, we are sure that we will be simply floating on the surface of this water. We cannot become one with that water. And when we realize, when the mind itself realizes that it need not maintain that separate identity anymore and float on top of the water, because the water is everything. And then it simply dissolves, no more holds on to that individual idea through its intellect or imagination. It surrenders or it dissolves. It becomes no more having a separate identity. It will not, that imaginative identity which it had, it just gives up and recognizes the origin, the self alone is the truth. And it is the same truth even when one doesn't know that, even when was holding on to an individuality, that was the truth itself. The ice was nothing but the water itself. So it recognizes that truth. And when it recognizes that and simply enjoys having reached that source, the truth, where there is no more it needs to put any effort to become water. It no more needs to do anything. No intellectual idea it has to perceive. No imaginative idea it needs to perceive. It silently enjoys being the water. When it starts to enjoy that, Bhagavan says that is true tapas. That is the real tapas. So Bhagavan, by this Atma Vichara, who am I, makes us turn towards that origin, that truth which alone is, instead of the imaginative ideas and thoughts. So every time a thought rises within us, and doesn't matter how many thoughts rises within us, Bhagavan asks us to diligently inquire to whom is this. And by doing so, we recognize it is for me, this imaginative I, this separateness, which we believe that we are an ice separate from the water and have to become one day that water, that we are an ego, one day we have to become the self or know the self. That idea becomes available for us to inquire. And therefore we question that idea. Who am I? What is that I really say as I? And when we question that, and when we try to find out what we really refer to as I, and turn in within and dive with this question, who am I? Then the mind, which was holding on to an individual notion, gets merged in that truth, the self, which is the only thing which ever shines. And by repeatedly diving into that self, Bhagavan assures that the mind will gain enough strength to recognize the truth and become one with it, to get dissolved in that truth. The immense grace of Bhagavan, with which alone we could have come to this direct path of Atma Vichara. For the next 20 minutes, let us do Atma Vichara. Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya Namo Ramana. Thank you all. Over to Sharda Akka.
Namo Ramana. Prostrations to Ramana, shining as the self in all beings. By the immense grace of the self manifest as Ramana, we have been meditating on the words of Bhagavan in question answers, as well as been blessed with the session of self-inquiry. And we continue to meditate on Bhagavan's words as they have been compiled in Ramana Gita. Ramana Gita is a compilation of 18 chapters, just like the Bhagavad Gita, but the chapters are briefer. And this has been compiled by Ganapati Muni. It's a record of question answers, questions to Bhagavan and answers by him. And we saw that in the second chapter, there is a composition of Bhagavan Shri himself, Bhagavan Ramana himself. And this is called the Eka Shloki of Bhagavan. There is another Eka Shloki which is Ekamaksharam Hrudi Nirantaram Bhasate Swayam Likhyate Katham. But this is famous as the Eka Shloki. The importance of this shloka was brought home to us by Sri C. Sudarshanam in his book Eka Shloki of Ramana, that it is featuring very often the Ramana Gita, the Saddarshanam, the Sanskrit translation, and the Sanskrit translation of Upadesha Undiyar as Upadesha Saram by Bhagavan are referred to as the Prasthana Trayam. The three works of Adi Shankara of great significance are called Prasthana Trayam. And in the Ramana Shastra, these are referred to as Prasthana Trayam. And if we look at the Tamil works of Bhagavan, then very often it is a Ulladu Narpadu, Upadesha Undiyar, and Guruvachaka Kovai, which are referred to as Prasthana Trayam of Bhagavan. So here we have this shloka, Hridaya Kuhara Madhye, says Sri Sudarshanam, which is featuring in two of the three Prasthana Trayams. If we take Ramana Gita as one, and the other, Ulladu Narpadu, wherein he says that it features as the 8th verse of the Anubandham. So the Anubandham is the supplement. So Sudarshanam ji takes the supplement as being, appendix as being part of that text itself. And so he says that it is featuring in two places. It is a very important shloka. Now, we are familiar with it, most of us. Hridaya Kuhara Madhye Kevalam Brahmamatram Hi Aham Ahamiti Sakshat Atma Rupena Bhati. So, Kevalam Brahmamatram Hyaham Ahamiti Sakshat Atma Rupena Bhati. This is the first half of the verse. And the second half is Hridi Visha Manasa Swam Chinvata Majjata Va Pavanachalana Rodha Atma Nishtho Bhavatvam. Abide in the self. You abide in the self. Tvam, you. That you is an address to every one of us from Bhagavan. My dear child, you abide in the self. You abide in the self. So it's as if he is telling every one of us, or we have also seen that it may be that he says, may you abide in the self. It is his blessing and his direction to every one of us to abide firmly in the self, to be Atma-nishtha. So it's a very significant shloka. And we also saw that in a conversation, Muni said that he might write a whole Gita as commentary to it. And again, Sudarshanamji pointed out to us that the whole of the Ramana Gita may be seen as a commentary on this one shloka. Now, what is the further significance of the shloka is given by Muni. So he says, Shlokam Bhagavato Vaktran Maharsherimamukgatam. Shlokam Bhagavato Vaktrat Maharsherimamudgatam. Shrutyantasaram yo veda samshayo nasya jatu chit. Shrutyantasaram yo veda samshayo nasya jatu chit. Okay, so he says, Shlokam Bhagavato Vaktra. This has come from Bhagavan's own mouth. These are Bhagavan's own words. This Shlokam, Maharsher. This has come from Bhagavan Maharshi. Imamudgatam. It has emanated from Bhagavan. And what is it? It is Shruti Antasaram. Shruti are the Vedas, and the end of it is the Vedanta. Shruti Anta Saram. It is the essence of the Vedanta. This verse is the essence of the Vedanta. So, we did not study any of the Vedas. The 4 Vedas, which are impossible for each one of us to study. Here Muni is saying that this one shloka, if we delve into and if we understand, we would have got to the very crux of the entire Vedas. The Vedanta is first of all said to be the pinnacle of the Vedas. So it is Shruti Anta. Anta is the end, it comes at the end. Anta also means the pinnacle. When we go up Arunachala, the end is the peak. So Anta is also the pinnacle or the peak. Shruti Antasaram. And this is the very essence of that. So what is the essence of the scripture? Bhagavan has told us in Ulladu Narpadu, translated in Sanskrit by Muni as Saddarshanam, he says, Ahasputam Tattvamasiti Vedaha. So, what are the Vedas saying? Tattvamasi. They are saying it clearly. Adini and Rammaraigal Artedavuma. Ahasputam Tattvamasiti Vedaha. And there also Bhagavan says, Tathapya samprapya paratmanishtam. Asamprapya paratmanishtam bhuyo vicharo mati durbalatvam. Having heard the Shruti's declaration, having heard the Veda's declaration, you are that very self. If you do not attain it, it is mere weakness of the mind. So, Sudarshanamji says that when Muni declares, knowing the essence of this, then no further doubts can assail. Maharshe Shruti Antasaram yo Veda samshayo nasya jatu chit. Yo Veda. Veda means to know. Veda is knowledge. Veda is to know. With Vidya, Veda. So, Yo Veda, one who knows this shloka, one who understands this verse of Bhagavan, then no further doubts can come to such a one. That means such a one will be abiding in the self, because only self-abidance will remove all doubts. There is nothing else which can remove all doubts. The very nature of the identity is to doubt, because the nature of the identity is to divide. When there is a division, there will be doubts, there will be questions. Faith cannot be there. When there is division, how can there be faith? When there is unity, there will be faith. So, Muni is saying that if we understand this, further doubts will not be there. So, the important thing is to understand this verse. What is the meaning of this verse? We saw Bhagavan says, Hridaya Kuhara Madhye. Hridaya, the heart, Kuhara, cave, in the cave of the heart, Madhye, at the very center of the cave of the heart, Kevalam Brahmamatram, the Brahman alone shines, Kevalam Brahmamatram. It shines and it reveals itself as I, as this is the Atman, Atma Rupena Bhati, Aham iti. Sakshat Atma Rupena Bhati, as the very self it shines. So, this is what it says. So, the Muni says in the next verse, after saying that by understanding this, all our doubts will be cleared and we would have understood the very essence of the scriptures. Muni further says, he says, this shloka, what does it say? In the shloka, Bhagavan is describing the nature of the self. Atra shloke bhagavata purvardhe sthanamiritam. He says he has given the location of the self. Purvardhe atra shloke bhagavata. Bhagavan atra shloke, in this shloka, Purvardhe, in the beginning, what is he doing? He is giving the location of the self. Purvardhe sthanamiritam sthanam. What is the location given? It is Hridaya Kuhara Madhye. Bhagavan has stated that in the center of the heart cave. So a location is given. And what is meant by this cave? We saw that what is meant by this cave is something internal. So Muni says, Sharirakasya drishyesmin Sharire Panchabhautike. The Panchabhuta Sharira. The body made up of 5 elements. Within this itself, the location has been given. Sharirakasya drishyesmin. For those who are having the feeling of being embodied, they have been given a location within this body's limit. That is the grace of Bhagavan. So he has said, Hridaya Kuhara Madhye. And we saw that we have to enter the heart to experience it. Enter and reach the center. We have to reach the center. So this, what is a center, was something we dwelt on. We dwelt on the fact that the center is not the periphery, and something which is the periphery is the senses. The world is peripheral. It is outside of the senses. So Bhagavan says again in Ulladhanarpada that the world is dependent on the senses. It is outside of it, and its recognition is dependent on our sense organs. Now, what are our sense organs dependent on? They are dependent on the mind. So in another sense, Nandakumarji also tells us, the world is contained in the sense organs. All that is seen is contained in our eyes. All that is heard is contained in our ears. Or to put it in another way, if you look at the Jnanendriyas or the organs of knowledge, all that is seen is contained in sight. All that is heard is contained in hearing. So all this is contained. So the moment we look at our sight, we understand that the entire seen world is contained in our seeing. For a person who cannot see, there is no seen world at all. For a person deprived of the sense of hearing, there is no auditory world at all. So, that world itself is not there. The seen world is not there for one who cannot see. So, that world, the entire world is contained in our sense perceptions. This is what Bhagavan says in Kulladinarpadu. And then further he says, Yat pancha koshatmakamasti deham. And then the body is there, which is containing all this. And through this body, the senses, we sense the world and it is contained in this. And where is our body of having all these senses? Panchendriyanam manaso vashe syat shabdadi rupam bhuvanam samastam. And sabdadi satyendriya vritti bhasya satyendriyanam manaso vashe syat. They are all under the control of the mind. We all understand, actually, if we pause and look at our experience, as Bhagavan says, in an unhurried manner, if we look at our experience, when we close our eyes, initially, of course, we don't see anything. We may hear things. So, because most of the perception is in the seen world, so we close our eyes when we do dhyana, mostly. We can do it with our eyes open physically, but our vision is closed. We cut off seeing, we cut off hearing. So when we cut it all off, then what happens? We recognize that we feel a sense of our body. I am sitting here and doing dhyana. We may be aware of that. So when we are aware of that, very clearly, where are we aware of it? Where is the awareness of the body happening? It is very clearly happening only in the mind. Very clearly, we ourselves can see, isn't it? We can experience that, oh, right now I am sitting here, I am listening, or I am seeing, I am doing this. So when I am actually in the process of listening or seeing, I don't recollect it. But in the vichara, when we sit down in an unhurried and recollected manner, when we can see, then we can see, oh, my body is in my mind. I am aware of my body. I am aware of my breathing. I am aware. So we can see that there are two layers over there. One is the layer of which I am aware, the things of which I am aware. It could be the body, it could be the sounds, it could be my breath, but I am aware of all these. I am aware of these. So there is that. These are all objects. And what I am aware of in the mind is called a thought. So these are the thoughts that we have. All our thoughts, all these experiences. Sometimes I may, when I get into some emotional memory, I will forget that I am sitting here, where I am sitting, what I am doing. I may travel, I may have some thoughts about going to some other place. I may think about some person. I may think about some joy or sorrow within me. I may then, when I do that, then I forget the body and I get into a slightly subtler layer of the thought itself. Not different from thought, but in thought itself, we find more and more and more subtler thoughts. Gross thoughts are those which are connected with or about gross experiences. Subtle thoughts are about subtle experiences. But then if we are again watchful, and that's what Bhagavan asks us to be, he says, find out, ask for whom is this thought. We recognize now there is this thought in me. There is this thought of sorrow. There is this thought of joy. As Dilip was beautifully telling us, there is this thought of having to attain something all that time. Thought itself is a motivation, a push to attain something or the other. Attain something. I must do this and get this. I must do this and get this. As he said, even in our sadhana, I must do my inquiry and get to the self, as he said, right? So there is this thought. There are these thoughts. And we can recognize that the thoughts arise and subside, arise and subside. And for every thought, there is this feeling, this underlying feeling, which we do not normally define, that it is mine, it is mine, it is my experience, my thought, mine. Therefore, Bhagavan asks us to accept this, to see it clearly and accept it. See it clearly by asking ourselves, for whom is this thought? For whom is this thought? Then the answer comes, for me. And then, okay, so it is not I. It is for me. It is coming and going. Different thoughts are coming and going. So who is this I? Who is the I? Who is this I who knows these thoughts, who's experiencing these thoughts, who's claiming these thoughts? So when we ask ourselves this question, we are getting more and more into the center of the heart cave. We are getting towards the center of the heart cave. Now the cave, as we said, is dark, because this is not an area where anybody else can come and throw any light. Anybody can give us any answers. And actually, we do not know very clearly. We don't have a clear idea at all about our own minds. As we go in, it slightly becomes clearer. Like in a dark room, we get used to the darkness. Slowly we get used to the darkness. We can grope our way inside. And this is inside into a cave. And so we might get worried. And we may come out, which happens very often. We come out. So we keep coming out of the cave. We don't go into the madhye to find that kevalam brahmamatram. We come out. Then we have to go in again. But the advantage is probably the more number of times we go in, the more familiar we get with the fact of that it's okay, there is this darkness inside the cave, but I'm going towards that center where I will find the true light. And then slowly, as we have the greater courage and persistence to go, then we can see the aura of that light. Aham iti sakshat atmarupena bhati. It starts, the light, we can start perceiving the aura. And that is the spurana, the light, the aura of that light comes to us, and then we will be able to persist and go into that kevalam brahmamatram, where the Brahman alone shines. So by Bhagavan's grace, let us persist in the inquiry. Let us not get worried and try to come out halfway. If by chance we have come out, let us not get worried. Still, let us get back again inside. Let us keep going inside until we are able to get to the Madhye, Hridaya Kuhara Madhye. Within, inward is the path, says Bhagavan. May it be so by His grace that we are all Atmanishta. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramana.
Aparasachit Sukhavarirashi Yasyormimatram Bhuvanam Samastam Guhahitam Tam Ramanam Ghabhiram Chintavihiram Hrudi Chintayami Chintavihiram Hrudi Chintayami. Namo Ramana. Thank you, Akka. Thank you all.
Namo Ramana. Thank you, Dilip.